Have you ever found yourself sitting quietly, maybe with a cup of tea or just gazing out the window, and suddenly a memory comes back? Not a happy one, but something that stings, even after all these years. Maybe it's something someone said to you decades ago. Maybe it's a decision you wish you could undo, or a moment that still feels unresolved in your heart. It's strange, isn't it? How something so old can still feel so fresh. At this stage of life, when we're finally free of the rush of raising kids, chasing careers, or managing endless responsibilities, you'd think the past would leave us alone. But sometimes it shows up even more loudly when everything else quiets down. That's why today I want to talk to you, not about physical aches and pains, but about emotional ones. The kind we often bury because we were too busy to deal with them. The kind that quietly shape how we feel, how we love, how we see ourselves. This isn't just about reflection, it's about healing. Because no matter our age, healing is still possible. In fact, after 65, it can be even more powerful. Think of it like tending to a garden. Some weeds may have been there for a long time, but once pulled, the soil is freer, lighter, ready to bloom again. And you deserve to bloom again, no matter how many seasons you've lived through. Let's talk about one of the most common emotional scars people carry well into their senior years, the feeling of not being good enough. It may have started in childhood. Maybe someone close to you, perhaps a parent, a teacher, or even a spouse, constantly made you feel like your best was never enough. Maybe you were compared to a sibling, or made to feel small for your dreams. And over time, that message got stuck inside you like a quiet whisper saying, you should have done more, been more. And so, even after raising a family, giving your best years to others, or working hard your whole life, there might still be that nagging voice. Did I matter? Did I do enough? But here's the truth I want you to hear, and I mean this with all my heart. You were enough. You still are enough. The version of you who made mistakes, who struggled, who got up again and again, that person is worthy of love, of rest, of peace. Healing that old scar doesn't mean pretending it never hurt. It means acknowledging it, letting yourself feel it without shame, and then choosing to release it. One way to do this is by speaking kindly to yourself, out loud even. Every time you hear that inner critic, respond with compassion. Say, I did my best, and that was enough. Over time, your brain starts believing what your heart already knows. Another emotional scar that often lingers is unforgiveness, especially toward ourselves. It might be a decision we regret, a relationship we walked away from, or stayed in too long. Words we said in anger, moments we wish we could rewind. These memories tend to surface more as we grow older because we finally have time to reflect. But reflection doesn't have to mean punishment. Maybe you've been carrying guilt or shame for something that happened 20, 30, even 50 years ago. And no one else may even remember it, but you do. It's like a shadow following you around, reminding you of what you wish you could undo. But let me gently say this. There is a point where holding on no longer serves you, where punishing yourself doesn't make anything better. It only keeps you from living fully in the now. Imagine if you were talking to your younger self, perhaps the version of you who made that mistake. Would you scold her endlessly, or would you put your arm around her and say, you didn't know then what you know now. You were learning, and it's okay. That's what healing looks like. It's offering yourself the grace you would offer someone you love. Sometimes the path to healing includes writing a letter to your past self, or even to someone you feel hurt by. Not to send it necessarily, but to speak your truth, to say what needs saying, to let the pain have its voice, and then let it go. You'd be surprised how freeing it feels just to put words to what you've held inside. It's also important to recognize that some wounds came from people who never apologized. Maybe they have passed away, or maybe they never understood how deeply they hurt you. And that makes the healing feel even harder, doesn't it? Because we're waiting for closure that may never come from them. But here's something powerful to remember. You don't need someone else's apology to heal. You can give yourself the closure. You can say, what they did was wrong, but I won't let it define the rest of my life. And that's really what this is about. Choosing not to let the past steal any more of your present, because your present is precious. You are here now, breathing, living, capable of joy, connection, laughter, new memories. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to let some of that old pain go, not all at once. When we begin to let go of old guilt and the belief that we were never enough, something begins to stir in us, something tender and new. But there's another wound that often hides deep beneath the surface, especially for those of us who've spent our lives taking care of others. It's the pain of feeling emotionally abandoned. Now, this isn't always easy to talk about, especially when it came from people we loved. Maybe you had a partner who was physically present but emotionally distant. Our parents who fed you and clothed you but never truly saw you, never asked how you felt or listened when you needed to be heard. Or perhaps it was a time in your life when you desperately needed support during a loss, an illness, a moment of deep uncertainty, and the people you thought would be there simply weren't. Emotional abandonment leaves a quiet ache. It teaches us not to expect too much from people, not to rely too heavily, not to open up, because somewhere along the line we learned it's safer to stay silent. But here's the truth. That silence turns into loneliness. And the older we get, the more dangerous that loneliness becomes, not just for our mental health, but for our hearts and souls. One of the bravest things you can do after 65 is to start trusting yourself enough to reconnect, to allow yourself to be seen again, to say, I matter. My feelings matter. I deserve to be heard, and I deserve to be loved, not just out of duty, but because I'm me. And healing that old scar doesn't require a dramatic confrontation or a grand apology from someone else. It begins with noticing where you've been hiding, emotionally. It starts when you stop brushing your own needs aside or pretending things didn't hurt when they really did. Even something as simple as journaling, just a few lines each morning about how you truly feel, can begin to shift that story. Or having a heartfelt conversation with someone you trust, even if it feels awkward at first. Or joining a small group, maybe at your local library or community center, where you can connect over shared interests. You'd be surprised how many people your age are also craving real connection, but are too afraid to admit it. The point is, healing emotional abandonment means reclaiming your voice, giving yourself permission to speak up. And perhaps most importantly, learning how to give yourself the kind of emotional support you've longed for from others, because while others can comfort us, the most lasting healing often starts from within. Now, let's talk about another scar that many people carry silently, even into their 70s or 80s. And that's grief that was never fully processed. And no, I'm not just talking about the loss of loved ones, though that kind of grief is real and deep. I'm also talking about the losses we rarely name. The loss of a version of ourselves we never became. The dreams we set aside to take care of everyone else. The places we never got to see. The friendships that faded. The parts of life that quietly slipped through our fingers. Grief is not just about crying at funerals. It's about recognizing the ache that builds when life turns out differently than we imagined. Maybe you thought you'd be traveling the world by now, or painting again, or dancing like you used to. Maybe you thought a relationship would heal with time, but it didn't. Maybe a child took a path you can't understand, or a friend moved away and never looked back. These are quiet losses, but they're real. And when we don't let ourselves feel them, they collect inside us like stones in our pockets. But you're allowed to grieve, even now. In fact, you need to, because grief isn't weakness. It's love that hasn't had a place to land. It's your heart trying to make sense of all it's carried. Maybe you were taught to stay strong, to keep busy, to not dwell. That's how many of us grew up. But strength doesn't mean ignoring your sorrow. It means facing it with honesty and tenderness. Saying to yourself, this hurts. This didn't turn out the way I hoped, and it's okay to feel that. You might find that talking to someone helps, a trusted friend, a therapist, or even a support group. Or maybe you just need time alone with a photo album, some music, or a long walk under the trees. Healing grief doesn't follow a timeline. There's no deadline. But it does require permission. Permission to honor what was lost, to speak it, to cry for it if you need to. And then, slowly, to find joy again. Not because the pain disappears, but because you make room for something else alongside it. And here's something beautiful. When we heal old grief, we begin to see what's still here with fresh eyes. The laughter of a grandchild, the comfort of morning light, the feeling of music that moves through your bones. These moments are not small, they are life, showing up to remind you that there is still beauty, still wonder, still meaning waiting to be lived. Maybe for years your life was about duty, doing for others, and now we come to perhaps the most subtle but deeply rooted scar of all. The kind that often hides behind politeness, behind a smile, even behind a well-lived life. It's the scar of resentment. Resentment not always toward others, but sometimes toward life itself. It's not something many of us feel comfortable admitting. After all, we've made it this far, haven't we? We've raised children, worked hard, survived losses, loved deeply, and perhaps lost deeply too. And yet, sometimes, when the house is quiet, when the day winds down, when another year passes, we can't help but wonder, was this really it? Maybe you sacrificed more than anyone ever knew. Maybe you gave up dreams, stayed in relationships longer than you wanted, or put your needs second, third, last. Because that's what you were taught good people do. Maybe life didn't turn out the way you pictured it when you were young and hopeful and full of ideas about how everything would go. And if you're honest, maybe there's a part of you that feels bitter about time lost, about opportunities missed, about people who didn't show up, about the version of your life you didn't get to live. That's resentment, and it doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just sighs quietly in the spaces we don't talk about. But here's something you may not have heard enough. You're allowed to feel disappointed. That doesn't make you ungrateful. That doesn't mean you haven't lived a good life. It just means you're human. And part of healing resentment is giving yourself permission to tell the truth, to say, that hurt, that wasn't fair, that wasn't what I wanted. The trick, though, is not to build a home in that feeling. Resentment is like carrying a burning coal in your hand, waiting for the right person or moment to throw it at. But all the while, it's only you getting burned. Letting go of resentment doesn't mean pretending everything was okay. It means choosing to stop letting those old wounds shape your future. It means recognizing that no matter how many years have passed, you still have time. Precious time. Not time to be who you should have been, but time to be who you are now. Maybe you didn't get to travel the world, but could you explore something new now? Even if it's just learning something online, or visiting a nearby town, or joining a local group where people share your interests. Maybe your marriage wasn't what you hoped, but can you now reconnect with yourself, your needs, your joy, without having to explain it to anyone? Maybe the version of life you imagined didn't arrive, But the one you have now, it still has laughter in it. It still has mornings and music and moments that are worth noticing. That's how we begin to transform resentment, not by denying the pain, but by choosing not to let it take any more of our joy. When you start seeing each new day, not as a repetition of what's behind you, but as a fresh canvas still open to possibility, however small, you reclaim your power. Maybe today you sit in the sun for 5 minutes and feel warmth on your skin. That's healing. Maybe you forgive someone, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. That's healing. Maybe you look in the mirror and smile, not because everything's perfect, but because you're still here, still breathing, still becoming. That, too, is healing, because healing doesn't always look like dramatic transformation. Sometimes it looks like peace in your heart. Where there used to be tension, sometimes it looks like softening toward yourself. And here's what's beautiful. When we heal our emotional scars, when we finally stop carrying guilt, self-doubt, loneliness, grief, and resentment, we don't just improve our own lives, we also become beacons for others. Whether it's your children, your grandchildren, or even strangers you meet, you model what it means to live fully. Not perfectly, but fully, honestly, lightly. So as we wrap this time together, I want to remind you, you are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not the things that hurt you or the years you lost. You are the strength that brought you through it. You are the wisdom that survived. You are the light that's still glowing, and there is still more ahead. More laughter, more calm, more connection, more moments that can surprise you. Healing isn't about forgetting the past. It's about finally allowing yourself to live without being controlled by it. So take a deep breath. Right here, right now, this is a new moment, and maybe, just maybe, it's the one where your healing truly begins. If any part of today's message touched your heart, I'd love to hear from you. Share your story in the comments, whatever you're comfortable with. You never know who else might be reading and thinking, I thought I was the only one. And if you found value here, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more gentle and thoughtful content, and share it with someone you care about. There's always time to heal.